Hello, good evening and welcome to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, coming to you live from our studio here at Adesanwe Kanda in Accra. I am Martin Asiedu. Coming up this evening, Shraj indicts former Ghana Revenue Authority boss Reverend Amishadai Owusu for 8.9 million Ghana cedi financial loss, but legal questions emerge over its mandate to probe after petition withdrawal. Also coming up, anti-corruption campaigners hail President's directive for forensic audit into all Africa Games. And later tonight, we also give you details of the witness statement of the accused, now turned prosecution witness in the Akonta Mines court case. And before the bulletin wraps up, we'll update you also on the Electricity Company of Ghana's court case, where it has secured major legal victory as London Tribunal throws out PDS's $390 million claim. Details of all of these and more coming up within the next 1 hour. Before that, though, let's bring you the news summaries with Nura Mohammed. Hello, Nura.
Hi, Martin. Good evening. My name is Nura Mohammed. First in the summary, the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, has secured a decisive legal victory in London after an international arbitration tribunal dismissed all claims brought against it by the Power Distribution Services Ghana Limited, PDS. The ruling, delivered after nearly 3 years of proceedings, ends a long-running dispute over the controversial termination of the PDS concession agreement, a deal that was once touted as a major step toward reforming Ghana's power distribution sector. Now, meanwhile, former GRA boss Reverend Dr. Amishadai Owusu Amua has been indicted by Shraj for procurement breaches causing the state a loss of over $826,000. The contracts awarded to 3 companies for vehicle and logistics supply were found to be fraudulent. The case, which began with a 2022 petition by the Movement for Truth and Accountability, has been referred to the Attorney General for prosecution and recovery of funds. Now, the Food and Drugs Authority, FDA, has issued an immediate recall of Choice Irish Cream flavored drinks after laboratory tests confirmed that the product had been adulterated with sildenafil citrate, a prescription-only medicine used to treat erectile dysfunction and pulmonary arterial hypertension. In a statement released, the FDA explained that a drink manufactured by One Africa Industries Limited was registered as a food product and therefore should not contain any drug substances. The discovery of sildenafil citrate, a phosphodiesterase type 5 PDE5 inhibitor, in the beverage raises serious public health concerns, particularly because it was undeclared on the label. Also, the Minister of Health, Kwabena Minta Akando, has announced that 80% of the 700 junior medical doctors whose posting processes have begun will be deployed to districts across the country. According to the minister, the decision is aimed at addressing the uneven distribution of medical personnel, as most doctors prefer postings to the Greater Accra region, leaving rural and underserved communities with limited access to healthcare. And that's it for the summaries.
Thank you very much, Nura, for the news summaries. Let's delve into the details of the stories now. And our big one is what Shraj has been up and about doing, and also has to do with the fact that the woes of the former Director General of the Ghana Revenue Authority does not seem to go away anytime soon. You would recall that he was mentioned in the SML deal, right? Yes, well, the latest regarding him is that the Shraj has also undertaken some investigation, and he is in the middle of the storm. The woes of former Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Reverend Dr. Amishadai Owusu Amua, are far from over, as he finds himself in fresh trouble once again. This time, the Commissioner on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, Shraj, has found him and 3 companies liable for procurement breaches that cost the state a financial loss of over $826,000, equivalent to about 8.9 million Ghana cedis. Shraj's decision follows investigations into alleged corruption involving the award of contracts for the supply of vehicles and logistics to Rana Motors Ghana Limited, Telino Ghana Limited, and Sagel Motors and Trading Company Limited. The probe stemmed from a 2022 a 2022 petition by the civil society group Movement for Truth and Accountability, which accused the former GRA boss of procurement fraud and irregularities in contract awards. In its 165-page report dated the 28th of October 2025, Shraj concluded that the contracts were tainted with fraud and that Dr. Owusu Amwa, as head of Shraj, cannot escape liability since he supervised their execution. Shraj determined that his actions caused financial loss to the state and has referred him, along with 3 companies, to the Attorney General for prosecution and recovery of the funds. Shraj also recommended that the former GRA boss be barred from holding public office for at least the next 5 years. Let's try and get further details of what exactly was captured in the Shraj report. Joining me in studio now is Dennis Poaberi Wadam Esquire, who is with our legal desk here and has been combing through the Shraj report. Dennis, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Martin.
So in the Shraj report, it's quite extensive. Let's, start with the exact complaint that was forwarded to Shraj, under which they took their investigation. What exactly did they seek Shraj to do?
Well, so this was a complaint which was filed against the former GRA boss and some 3 companies in respect of allegations of corruption, fraud, and matters of abuse of office. This civil society organization is called Movement for Truth and Accountability, and they say that they had observed some dealings between the GRA and some companies in respect of some procurement processes for which they were suspicious that something was going wrong, for which they wanted Sraj to intervene. So they invoked the jurisdiction of Sraj and then asked Sraj to make certain investigations and then make some pronouncements. The 3 companies in question are: 1, the Rono Motors Ghana Limited, Telino Ghana Limited, and Sajel Motors and Trading. Part of the allegations will be that some of these companies cannot be physically located using the addresses that they provided in the correspondence between the GRA and those companies. That is to say, if we saw a letter that was written from GRA to one of these companies stating where they are supposed to be located, if you trace those addresses, you would not find those companies there. And in some instances, the exact places where these companies were purported to be operating from, when they got there, they realized that there were other companies that were rather operating there and not those specific companies. So they wanted Sraj to investigate the matter. Some of the key issues that were of concern to this civil society group was to the effect that these companies that were awarded, first of all, they were awarded by what we call the single source procurement strategy, or what you call the sole sourcing. They also say that these companies, per what they know, did not have the capacity to deliver on this particular contract. It explains why the company had failed to meet a first deadline, and upon an extension, they still failed. They were only able to execute a part of the contract. So they say that in itself also raises questions. They also argue that in their view and their assessment, some of the products, because it was supposed to be for the procurement of vehicles, that they were inflated prices. So these were issues that Sraj was called upon to look into. But something interesting happened along the line, because when Sraj ordinarily assumes jurisdiction over a certain matter, now mind you, as the rules of law are, Sraj cannot on its own investigate a person or an institution unless there's a complaint. Now in this case, there was a complaint before Sraj, and just when they started their investigation, they had finished investigating the complainant themselves, then the complainant files a notice of withdrawal. That is to say, they want to withdraw their complaint because they said they wanted to look into certain matters. Sraj, it now says that, yes, we do acknowledge that per the rules, we are supposed to act upon a complaint. But this appears to be a peculiar situation where we have already started acting on the complaint, and now you want to withdraw the complaint. We also do acknowledge that this is a matter of public interest. And for the fact that the allegations in there are corruption, fraud, and the like, we would want to proceed. So they proceeded to investigate, by which time they had already interviewed the complainant. What was left was for them to hear from the other side. But of course, the GRA and all the officials, a lot of them cooperated. They sent documents. They justified why they had to do all that they did. And indeed, they did confirm that yes, the existence of the contract. They explained why it had to be under sole sourcing, because they said it was an agent situation where the government of Ghana had given them some deadlines to meet in respect of revenue mobilization, some targets to meet. So they needed to mobilize that revenue, and they needed these resources to be able to do so. Now, in respect of the companies, they were also able to show records of their registration with the the Register of Companies and the like. Except that in Siraj's findings, including visits to the locations of the companies, they did not find two of the companies.
Like a physical address?
Yes, like a physical address of where they purportedly were operating from.
Okay.
In one instance, in fact, in both instances, they provided an explanation. One is to the effect that one of the companies had moved from where it originally was supposed to be operating, and it was in the process of looking for a place to establish its office. Now, in another instance, they were also putting up a building which was an uncompleted building because they had also moved from their original place. So those were matters that Siraj had to look at to come to a determination as to the existence, not existence in law, but the physical existence of a place of office. Yes, because those were also matters that were an issue.
And that is 2 out of the 3 companies?
Exactly. But the other one is a company that is already established, that did not have a lot of issues to deal with. Now let's look at what exactly the findings of Siraj were in respect of the matters that were raised as regards the mode of procurement, existence or otherwise, capacity of the companies, and with the issue of whether or not the prices of the contracts were inflated in respect of some of the items that were supposed to be procured for GRA. And based on that, we can now look at what the recommendations specifically are in respect of that matter. So let me just pull it out. It's quite a lengthy report, so you have to take your time and look through the pages to find exactly what
but while at that, do we know, was it established that monies had exchanged hands, that payment was made from the GRA to these 3 companies?
Yes,
that has been established.
Because they had to pay for the vehicles.
Certainly.
And the vehicles, some of them were delivered, some of them were not delivered. And of course, one of the allegations too was that they failed to pay for taxes, for which it was a loss of revenue to the state. So now the key findings, and this is just in summary form, that one, the Ghana Revenue Authority, under the respondent here refers to the former GRA boss, as head of the entity, awarded contracts for the supply of vehicles and logistics to 3 companies, and they mention the names of the companies. So it's established as a fact that those contracts were awarded. 2, that the GRA employed the single source procurement method in the award of the said contract, contrary to the claims of the allegations that the authority deployed the restrictive method. So the complainant actually said it was a restrictive method, but they found that it was actually a single source, or what you call a sole source. The third one is that the respondent misled the PPA in approving the request of the GRA to award the contracts to the said companies using single source procurement method in dubious circumstances. Mind you, for all procurement processes, it has to go through the Public Procurement Authority. And if you have to do it with a sole source or single source, as is properly called, there has to be justification for it. The finding of Siraj is that this was done using a dubious, that PPA was misled to give that approval, because the companies were, the circumstances as presented by GRA were such that they required to do it under a single source procurement. They also indicated, point 4, that the award of the contract was in breach of some provisions of the Public Procurement Act, and that the impugned companies were unable to duly fulfill their contractual obligations simply because they did not possess the requisite capacity to carry out the contract of such magnitude, and not because of disruptions in the supply chain owing to COVID-19 pandemic, as alleged by the respondent. So the explanation given by the respondent, that's the former GRA boss, and including some of the companies, were that the reason they could not deliver on all aspects of the contract was because of COVID-19 and that there was a disruption in supply chain. The finding of Sraj is that that cannot be true. It's simply because they didn't even have the capacity to do the work in the first instance. That the two companies, that's Telino Limited and Sajel Motors, in fraudulent circumstances entered into separate contracts with Rono Motors for the supply of the same vehicles to GRA. That is another finding of Sraj. The seventh one says that the prices of the vehicles procured from Rono Motors Limited were inflated, having regard to the specifications of the vehicles and the fact of their bulk purchase compared to competitive prices of the vehicles at other firms, notably Toyota Ghana Limited. They also say that both Sajel Motors and Trading Company and Telino Ghana had no physical locations and could not be traced to the addresses provided by them in all their correspondence at the time of the contract. There are still a few more.
Right.
That the contract for the award and supply of vehicles and logistics to the GRE was tainted with fraud and corruption, and that the respondent being the entity head, cannot escape liability as he supervised its execution. The 10th finding is that as of the date of the complaint, the three companies, they mention the names of the companies, were not tax compliant as they have not fully satisfied their tax obligations on the vehicles and other logistics. And now this is where the money comes in. Finally, that's the final finding.
Right.
That the action of the respondent caused financial loss to the state in the sum of $826,551 United States dollars, or the cedi equivalent is 8.9 million Ghana cedis. I mean, approximately, using the exchange rates of us at the time of 27th October 2025. So these were the key findings of Sraj.
Okay.
In respect of the matters of why GRE had to do a sole sourcing, the issues of whether the companies actually exist in reality, and whether
they even had the capacity
to do it, or whether the prices were inflated,
right,
and all of that.
Okay, Dennis, thank you for at least walking us through the 156-page Sraj report, which right now has indicted the former Ghana Revenue Authority boss. The entire document has been forwarded to the Attorney General for further action to be taken. But let's go to the phone lines now. We have been joined by Joseph Dindiok Bemka, who is former Deputy Attorney General, and he also happens to be the lawyer for the three companies that have been named, and the companies are Rono Motors Ghana Limited, Telino Ghana Limited, and Sajel Motors Trading Company Limited. Counsel, good evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, Martin. It's been a while.
Yes,
and thanks for having me. Thanks to your cherished listeners for the opportunity.
Good to have you. To start with, just for clarity, is the name of the company that you're representing Rono Motors, or the one that we all know, Rana Motors?
No, it's not. It's not Rana. It's Rono. It's a Ghanaian-owned company.
Right.
Rono Motors.
Okay. Coincidentally, that particular one is not one of those that they could not find a physical address to, but the Telino and Sajel Motors, based on the report, we are told that they did not have or could not locate a physical address for them. Are you aware of this, and how do you respond to this?
Well, first of all, Martin, as I indicated, let me state at the preliminary stages that I have the instructions of my clients to proceed to court to challenge the report.
Right.
That's the preliminary remark I want to make. And the grounds for it are such that when we file the matter, it will be the subject of discussion. I recall that a few minutes ago, a colleague of yours read, for example, about sole sourcing, which was used as a method for awarding the contract to the companies. And the fundamental question Sraj hasn't addressed is whether that had the blessing of the PPA. And if the PPA approved it, what fault will the parties bear? That's the fundamental thing that they ought to have established first. Because once an entity hears of an opportunity or sees an opportunity, you go take advantage and apply and go through the processes. So if PPA approves that sole sourcing to be the method, I don't see how Sraj is going to challenge that, because the method of procurement is determined by PPA. And if any entity comes before PPA and then makes a particular request, PPA looks at it and either approves or disapproves. Once they approve, that's the end of the matter, because they have that mandate so to do.
Okay.
It's not even Sraj that is supposed to do that. So the question they have raised about the single source procurement that was used is neither here nor there. Now, you also look at the amount they arrived at, that the caused financial loss of about 826,000. If you read the report well, what they are seeking to say is that the market price at Toyota Ghana Limited, compared to the prices that the companies actually quoted and were paid, is in excess of about this amount. But let me ask you this fundamentally. If a company goes to buy cars from Toyota to supply to an entity, and it buys from Toyota at $10,000, for example, Martin, and it is going to sell it to a third party, will it sell it at the Toyota price, or it will add some margins to it to also make profit? Again, I leave that for you to judge. So this conclusion they came to is as a result of a false presumption that they made. That is our position on the matter. Because Toyota Ghana Limited are the original suppliers of Toyota vehicles. But no law precludes a company from Ghana from buying vehicles from Toyota and supplying to other entities. And of course, when I buy vehicles from Toyota to supply to another entity, I cannot supply to the other entity with the amount that I bought from Toyota. So clearly, we will address that issue as we move on. Then also they talked about taxes, and they said that Rono has complied with their taxes and attached all the necessary things. The fear I have, Martin, is that when such reports go out, then the companies become dark in the eyes of the public. And there are conclusive findings that they have made. So we are of the opinion that Shraj got it wrong, and we are going to challenge it in court to ensure that it is overturned.
Right. So clearly, you definitely want to have your day in court. And now that the Attorney General has also been formally handed the document from Shraj, he tells us that he might also want to take action. But talk to us about the reaction of your clients. Were they given fair hearing, you believe, during the process that Shraj undertook during their investigation? Did your clients get the indication?
I will not fault the processes that Shraj used. They asked for documents, they were supplied. They asked for physical interviews, it was conducted. I will not fault the process at all. What I fault, rather, is the conclusions that they arrived at as a result of the facts that were adumbrated at the trial. That is actually, and then also you are talking about the Attorney General. The Attorney General is also mindful of the fact that the indicted persons have the right to challenge the report in court and to set it aside. So until the indicted persons do not exercise their right to challenge it in court, where the Attorney General can then move to say that they want to carry out or implement what is in the report, the Attorney General cannot hasten to start prosecution as a result of this report, because the right of the persons who have been indicted in the companies have not been exhausted, namely that the report can be challenged in court and set aside.
Okay.
And that is exactly what the companies and the personalities indicted intend to do.
Right. And we also do know that although the petitioner in question, that is Movement for Truth and Accountability, later withdrew the complaint, Shraj in their report cited public interest considerations, so they still went ahead although the petitioner had withdrawn the earlier petition. Do you hold the view that the commission may have acted outside its mandate?
Don't worry at all. It is one of the grounds we're going to trigger, so don't worry. There are a lot of grounds, because you see, if a complainant, but for the complainant, Shraj was not aware and seized with anything to investigate anyway. Shraj, if they had an opportunity to investigate the matter before the complaint came, that's a different thing.
Right.
But the one who came with the complaint said that, look, I've realized that I cannot proceed with this, so I'm withdrawing it. And then you went ahead and did your own findings and drew your own conclusions. Meddlesome busybody or a constitutional mandate. We will, all these things will be answered at the appropriate contest. Because the question we ask ourselves is, after the petition, if the person did not cooperate to provide you with evidence necessary for you to continue with the matter, how did you arrive at your conclusions? And in any case, as I have stated time and again, it will be one of the novel situations that we ought to look at in actually engendering a legal jurisprudence, whether or not when a complaint is withdrawn, filed and withdrawn, the authority can still proceed to investigate in spite of the fact that there's no complainant at that stage.
Right.
All that will be determined by the court. But as I have stated, our clients, that the companies and the directors, saw a business opportunity, went for it, complied with the law, did the bidding, and then officials who assessed it said they were qualified and awarded the contract. So remember that there's a legal dictum, and I'm rendering it in English, that says that all official documents are assumed to be genuine and valid insofar as they comply with law. So the trial will have to establish that the way of awarding the contract to us was fraudulent. They did not meet the standard as required in the Public Procurement Act. And we are saying that as companies, we saw the advert, we went in and they made the necessary applications and then complied with it. And it was awarded to the companies. And so whatever findings they have made, I have said that we contest it seriously and we intend to do so in court.
Right. Counsel, we are grateful, and certainly it's one of the cases we are also quite interested in, so we'll be following keenly how all of this plays out in court. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm grateful.
Right. We've been speaking to former Deputy Attorney General Joseph Dindiok Pemka, who is lawyer for the three companies cited in this report that has been released by Shraj and forwarded to the Attorney General. And the companies in question are Rono Motors Ghana Limited, Telino Ghana Limited, and Sagel Motors and Trading Company Limited. And based on the report from Shraj, they indicate that these companies were given the contract to provide vehicles to the Ghana Revenue Authority through sole sourcing or single sourcing, which means that they went straight and were asked to be the one. So it wasn't open for other companies to bid for the contract. So that is one of the issues Shraj is raising. And then also the amounts that were paid to these companies to procure the vehicles for the Ghana Revenue Authority has also become a bone of contention. And so all of this will be debated in court quite strongly, like the counsel has just told us, and he's representing these three companies and has already started poking, holes into some of the issues raised by Shraj in their report. Certainly on Hot Edition, subsequent bulletins, and on our major platforms, you'd get to hear how all of this plays out in court when the Attorney General does file or proceed to get the court's input on this matter. You're still listening to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We are live around the world on 3news.com. It's about 30 minutes after 5 p.m. and we are airborne. So we are going on to some other stories we have for you this evening. You would recall that yesterday, in the latter part of the day, we got information that the Office of the President had given indication they were going to conduct a full-scale audit into the 13th All-Africa Games. Well, anti-corruption campaigners have welcomed the president's directive where he has asked the Auditor General to conduct a forensic audit into the hosting of the All-Africa Games in Ghana. The president's order follows findings submitted by the National Intelligence Bureau, the NIB, which underscores government's commitment to accountability, transparency, and prudent use of public funds. Ghana hosted the Games from the 8th of March to the 23rd of March 2024. While the event boosted national pride and showcased new sporting facilities, it also drew public criticism over the level of spending, with reports indicating more than $195 million went into infrastructure and another $46 million into operations. The audit will examine all financial and operational aspects of the games, including procurement, expenditure, infrastructure, and post-event management. It also will assess how effectively government agencies and committees coordinated to deliver the games. Now, you'd want to follow all of this on our social media page. So we are streaming on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you want to see the specifics of what exactly the letter from the Office of the President to the Auditor General, the content of it, if you want to know, just log on to our Facebook page, 3FM, look for it, and then you can also follow us whilst we walk you through. So the scope of the investigation or for the forensic audit will be to review all financial and operational aspects of the games, focusing on 4 key areas, which are the order to investigate how tenders were handled, checking contractor and supplier selection, ensuring compliance with the Public Procurement Act 665 as well. Now, we do also know, for instance, that the President has given the Auditor General up till the middle of December 2025 to submit his final report. And like we indicated, it will examine the financial and operational aspects of the game, including procurement, expenditure, infrastructure, and post-event management. It will also assess how effectively government agencies and committees coordinated to deliver the games, which many were excited about because some Ghanaian athletes actually put up their A game and brought excitement and joy to the country. But behind the scenes, a lot of money was spent, and that is what has raised issues now that the games are over. People are asking how much exactly was expended throughout this particular event, and was it value for money, or we probably overpaid? Certainly, if we had underpaid or we minimized the utilization of the funds, this may not have been an issue. But the concern largely is that based on the kind of sport infrastructure that was put up for the games and the amount that was expended, there are questions to be answered as regards how much went into all of this. People believe that too much money was used, but we actually like the final outcome of the event because not that only other African nationals that participated won medals. Ghana actually won a number of gold medals as well. So it is one of the subjects that will be keeping very close tabs on as well. Now, the audit will also cover these operations. Specifically, the review will focus on financial management and expenditure control, reviewing funding sources, disbursements, expenditures, and sponsorship arrangements. Let's now speak to Vitus Azim, who is an anti-corruption crusader. Mr. Azim, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on 3FM.
Good evening.
Right, thank you for joining us. To start with, what are your initial thoughts on the decision of government to ask for a forensic audit into the All Africa Games?
Well, this has been expected for a long time because there were problems with that All Africa Games, and people were raising concerns about the way things were done, accountability. So if he has ordered an investigation, it is a welcome decision, especially as he has promised to fight corruption and ensure accountability of his officials. So I think that it's a good idea. It's a good initiative that he has ordered that he should investigate this matter.
Right. What should a forensic audit of this nature aim to uncover beyond, finding whether the monies were used in the right way?
I'm not expecting forensic audit, but I think that you should look at the people that were involved and whether the monies were used according to approved budgets or not, and how much of it was used for what purpose. I think that's what we should be looking at. Who was involved? Were they approved expenditures? Was it budgeted for? And if so, how much money were involved? Was all the money used or not? I think these are the questions that the forensic audit should seek to find.
Right. I mean, this wouldn't be the first time that we are having the executive ask that a probe be undertaken or some forensic audit be done. Usually we hear of it. It is given, like you're saying, public acceptance, but then rarely do we see that the actual follow-up and that sanctions are applied, if any. What mechanisms can we use to ensure that, at least for this particular one, we would all follow each step of the way, and that if any wrongdoing is found, the culprits are brought to book?
Well, it always depends on the leadership. Since the president himself has ordered this, let's just hope. We cannot be sure, but let's just hope that the right thing will be done, and that those that are found culpable will be brought to book. But there's no guarantee that they would be, because the politics in this country is such that when it involves top political people, sometimes we don't get what we expect.
Individuals who are found to have flouted any law or rules are dealt with according to law. Very rarely do you hear that. So he is raising concerns with leadership, that now that leadership has been shown in even asking that an audit be done, same interest should also be carried out in ensuring that we get to the bottom of it, and that if any praise singing is worthy, it is accordingly giving to whoever must be praised. In the same vein, if any individual falls foul of expectations of the law and must be dealt with, that should also be made public, and then everybody get to know about it. What do you also think, Tim, a few days ago? Right.
You see, this is very crucial. I said between 1st and 6th January, he was
1st
already
and
gone.
6th, okay. My mistake.
He was already gone. I said, when he left, the president was Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
Okay.
At the time he left.
So at the time he left,
in a proper historical context.
Okay.
And
at
I'm
the time
saying,
he left,
and I'm saying that
he had not been, Muhammad had not been sworn in yet.
No, he had not.
Okay.
And I'm saying that at the time we couldn't have blocked him.
Okay.
We couldn't.
Why? Why not?
Oh, I think I've thrown a lot of innuendos around for you to come to that conclusion. I said his cousin was the president. We were not controlling the ports of exit and entry, and even then, we were not getting the cooperation at the time from other security agencies.
You weren't getting any cooperation.
No, we're not.
You had asked for them?
Oh, we asked for all that, but we were not. It was as if there was a policy of block the OSP out. That was what we were facing, and that was the circumstances under which we were being expected to perform. I think I've complained about these things over time, but we were on our own. It was only the police and the military that did well to still show us up in respect of our work. National security, no, at the time. The situation is different now. National Signals Bureau, no, at the time. The situation is different now. National Intelligence Bureau, zero. At the time, the situation is different now to perform our job. This was the situation in which we found ourselves. And I'm being asked how I let Ken Oforiatta through this.
And that is Kisi Ejabeng, who is Ghana's special prosecutor. On the KSM show, he was telling the nation, more or less reiterating his press conference where he said that at the time Ken Oforiatta, the former finance minister, was leaving Ghana, he did not have the capacity to have stopped him. They had no knowledge, in fact, of it, and that some of the state security agencies were not cooperating with the special prosecutor. If they had knowledge prior knowledge that Ken Ofori-Atta was about leaving Ghana, they may have taken some steps to either prevent him or at least ask him to stay for investigations, after which he could have left. But the time that he left, which he, according to the OSP, was between the 1st and 6th of January. Mind you, 1st and 6th of January, the NPP was still in government. It was after the 7th of January where the current government, the NDC government, took over. So the current president, John Dramani Mahama, was sworn in on the 7th. So Ken Ofori-Atta, based on what the OSP is saying, left before John Mahama, His Excellency, was sworn in, and this current administration took office, indirectly inferring that because Ken Ofori-Atta's cousin was the president and the NPP was technically still the government of the day, they easily allowed him to leave when that information was not, to him, did not come to their knowledge. So he has also at his press conference reiterated the fact that the information they have, and from everything that has played out in the last few months, Ken Ofori-Atta has no interest of returning to Ghana, at least not in the next 4 years. So he knows that the former finance minister will not come to Ghana for any reason or for any interest. That is an interesting position for the OSP to share publicly, saying that he doubts whether Ken Ofori-Atta would ever want to return to Ghana. But it even raises more questions. Why would a former finance minister who superintended for 8 years on how Ghana's finances are expended or used decide to leave just when a new government is taking over, and from all indications does not want to return to the country where he watched and looked over our finances? There clearly are more questions than answers that we have for you now. But, well, we'll see how all of this plays out. In the next few minutes, we'll be going to business. Before that, the Electricity Company of Ghana has won a major legal victory in London after an international arbitration tribunal dismissed all claims brought against it by Power Distribution Services, PDS. The decision, which comes after nearly 3 years of proceedings, brings final closure to one of the most controversial deals in Ghana's power sector, the PDS concession agreement. In 2019, PDS took over management of ECG under a 20-year concession as part of the Millennium Challenge Compact between Ghana and the United States. The agreement was meant to improve efficiency and reliability in power distribution. But just months later, government terminated the deal after discovering that the payment guarantees submitted by PDS through Qatar Al-Qut Insurance and Reinsurance Company were fraudulent. Court rulings in Qatar later confirmed the documents had indeed been forged. PDS went to arbitration claiming wrongful termination and demanding nearly $390 million in compensation for costs and alleged lost profits. However, the London tribunal dismissed the case entirely, siding with ECG's position that the fraudulent guarantees struck at the very heart of the concession and fully justified its termination. ECG was separated by Omnia Strategy LLP, led by Sherry Black Casey, and maintained that the move was necessary to protect the national interest. The ruling shields the government of Ghana from potentially paying hundreds of millions of dollars and allows ECG to move forward with efforts to strengthen power supply to Ghanaians without the shadow of the PDS dispute. And that's it for this part of the show. Time now, though, for the latest in the world of business. And Bismarck Owisa will bring that to us. Stay with us. This is 3FM 92.7. You're listening to Hot Edition.
It's a new year and Bills Microcredit is here to support your dreams. If you're not working but want to start a business, don't let money stop you. With just your Ghana card, you can get a loan to turn your ideas into reality. Already running a business? Need more capital? Or are you a salary worker looking for extra funds? Bills offers fast and easy loans with no collateral, no deposit, and no SUSI savings required. Wherever you are, whatever you need, Bills makes it it happen. Call Bills Microcredit today. Call 0596 920 833 or 0302 200 390 and get started. Bills is licensed and regulated by the Bank of Ghana. Bills, financing your needs. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the business segment on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Coming up, Ghana achieves 8% inflation, lowest rate since mid-2021, consolidating single-digit gains. I am Bismarck Kausa. This headline story and other stories lined up for you. Please stay. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. Ghana's battle against rising costs has recorded a significant victory, with the inflation rate dropping to 8% in October 2025. This marks a decrease from 9.4% recorded just a month earlier in September 2025. The new figure represents the lowest inflation rate recorded in Ghana since June 2021. The drop places inflation exactly at the central point of the Bank of Ghana's medium-term target band of 8 plus or minus 2. Let's listen to government statistician Dr. Al-Hassan Idrisu.
Prices in Ghana were 8% higher in October 2025 than they were in October last year. This inflation rate is what we call year-on-year inflation. It tells us how much prices have changed over 12 months. The 8% year-on-year inflation rate is lower than the September 2025 inflation rate of 9.4% by 1.4 percentage points, and far below the inflation rate of 23.8% we saw at the end of last year. This marks the 10th straight month of decline in inflation and the lowest inflation rate in 4 years. When we look at prices from September to October 2025, that is month-on-month inflation, prices actually fell a little by 0.4%. So on the average, things cost slightly less in October than in September. This continued slowdown confirms that Ghana's prices are stabilizing after a long period of volatility.
And that was government statistician Dr. Al-Hassan Idrisu. Now, the Bank of Ghana's total gold reserves reached 38.04 tons as of October 31, 2025. This was contained in market data released by the Central Bank on November 5, 2025. The latest represents more than a 35% increase compared to the 28.1 tons recorded in October 2024, highlighting continued growth in Ghana's official gold holdings. According to the data, the Bank of Ghana's total gold holdings stood at 30.53 tons in December 2024, meaning about 7.1 or 7.51 tons have been added between January and October this year. Moving on, the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, SNIT, has reaffirmed the long-term sustainability of Ghana's pension scheme, citing significant growth in its stock exchange investments, which have increased by nearly 2 billion cedis. Despite past concerns over deficits, investment risks, and delayed regulatory payments, SNIT says the scheme remains robust. Speaking at a stakeholder symposium, Director General Kwesi Efrifa Baine disclosed that the trust is currently restructuring parts of its investment portfolio to maximize returns for contributors.
The next 60 years will be a period that we will look back and be very happy with the successes that we will chalk together. SNIT is a pension fund that goes beyond the conventional from the cradle to the grave, because we are conscious of the need to expand, because we are becoming efficient at what it is that we do as we seek to bring the cost of operations down. Because the more we expand, the larger the numbers that will support us. So by doing so, the dependency ratio would go up because then you have more members supporting those that are in the pension bracket. And we're also confident because our investment returns would remain strong. I will broaden it into a conversation of the role of data and the role of having an organization that is digitally led.
And that was Director General of SNIT, Kwesi Efrifa Barbaine. Now, with the 2026 budget presentation scheduled for November 13, the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, FABAG, is urging government to prioritize policies aimed at stimulating consumer demand to drive economic growth. The executive chairman of FABAG, Reverend John Awuni, emphasized that measures that boost citizens' purchasing power are crucial for revitalizing the sector. In addition to broader demand-side policies, Reverend Awuni specifically called for the simplification of systems at Ghana's ports.
The current scan of the business environment indicates that demand is quite low now, and activity in the business sector is very, very quiet. You would also notice that essentially there's a very much increase in smuggling activities because the tax level at the Tema ports and then the ports are generally very high. Then you also notice that basically the port procedures are also kind of quite complicated for now. And so what we will be looking for is not necessarily tax reliefs. We are looking at issues of the simplifying the port processes. We are looking at the issues of basically ensuring that nuisance taxes should be removed.
And that was Executive Chairman of FABAG, Reverend John Awuni, sharing his expectations ahead of the 2026 budget. And that brings us to the end of the business segment on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck. Also, for more business stories, please check out our website, 3news.com. Reku Ampofo is here for sports. Please stay.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the sports segment here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. My name is Oreku Ampafo. We start off from some local stories where the Minister for Sport and Recreation, Honorable Kofi Adams, has reiterated government's commitment to grassroots sports development. The Minister announced a new initiative during the public account hearing on Tuesday. He emphasized the importance of grassroots football to the development of Ghana's game, highlighting the distribution of footballs and other essential materials to lower tier clubs in the country.
That the policy is still in the draft. The final stage of it being a draft is because of the realignment that we've had at the ministry. Now, recreation has been given a very high consideration. So we needed to factor that also into the policy. Previously, that was not so highlighted. The president also gave indication that he wants us to establish a school sports agency that will be responsible for school sports. So it will no longer be something the Ghana Education Service alone will be doing, where if they don't have time, it goes off. If they don't have money, it goes off. So an agency of a sort would have to be put in place that will be responsible for school sports and grassroots sports. We needed to factor all these into the draft policy as it existed. So I can assure you that before our next meeting, hopefully, if they haven't done the audit already and waiting to submit another report, maybe after the one that they will be submitting, you will not see this situation occurring anymore.
Now, away from that, the National Sports Authority, in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth and Sports, has announced that the suspension on professional boxing in Ghana will officially be lifted on Thursday, November 6th, 2025. The decision follows months of intensive consultations and reforms undertaken by the Ghana Boxing Interim Management Committee to address tragic events that led to the suspension of the sport earlier this year. The suspension was imposed after the unfortunate death of professional boxer Ernest Akushe on September 25, 2025, which sent shockwaves through the Ghanaian sporting community. According to the IMC's report, significant progress has been made in strengthening medical and safety protocols, improving administrative efficiency, and enhancing governance standards. Key reforms include the introduction of published medical and safety manuals, a functional interim medical commission, a centralized medical database, and an approved insurance framework to protect athletes. Certified ringside and medical staff will also now be mandatory at all sanctioned events. Now, before we go, let's just bring you some updates from the UEFA Champions League, where the early kickoff games have already started 15 minutes into the action and is still goalless between Karabag and Chelsea. However, Romeo Lavia has had to be subbed off due to injury. Moises Caicedo replacing the Belgian midfielder. Pafos are also holding Villarreal to a goalless draw currently. Other matches to be played later at 8 p.m. include Ajax versus Galatasaray, Benfica versus Bayer Leverkusen, Club Brugge host Barcelona, Inter Milan are home to Kairat Almaty, Manchester City face Dortmund, Marseille host Atalanta as Athletic Club travel to England to face Newcastle. That's all that time would allow us for here on the sports segment on Hot Edition, and also we wrap up here on Hot Edition on TFM 92.7. My name is Oreku Ampofo, and Hot Edition will be back on your radio waves tomorrow, same time, to bring you the latest news here in the country, on the continent, and the globe.